Welcome back. My name is Venus Green. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be taking a look at the second half of June, part 2 of our saga. All right, so as we move into the second half of June, the emotional instability and that information distortion that happened in the first half of the month is going to begin to evolve into something else entirely. And the focus is going to shift toward visibility, power, and influence. This part of June is going to likely feel far more performative than the first half, right? People aren't just reacting emotionally to the information anymore. What they're going to be trying to do is position themselves as they move through it. And underneath all of that, we begin to see the very early signs of the larger collective transition that's going to continue to build into July. So we also need to understand that the second half is unfolding under what? A Mercury retrograde setup. Yes, sir. So on the 12th of June, Mercury will enter its shadow period at 16 degrees of Cancer. Now, even before Mercury officially stations, right, it always has a shadow period. Now, it stations at the end of the month, but because it's in its shadow period, we're already going to be feeling like we are moving through themes that are going to be revisited, reconsidered, emotionally reprocessed later on. And because Mercury is in Cancer, those reversals are going to be deeply tied to things like our memory, our emotional interpretation, family systems, right? And also subjective perception. So all throughout the second half of June, people are already beginning to notice things like repeated conversations, emotional revisiting of the past, right? Narratives that are shifting, or probably just information that's not going to be able to remain consistent over time. Now, the second half of the month is going to open with Venus moving into Leo. So it's going to be making a series of major aspects as she moves through there. So it's going to change the atmosphere immediately, though, because Leo energy, it wants visibility, it wants expression, it wants recognition. So collectively, that part of June is going to feel louder. It's going to be more dramatic. It's definitely going to be more centered around things like our personal image, our identity, and presentation. On the 15th of June, Venus is going to make a supportive aspect to Uranus and Gemini. So that actually will create a sudden shift in the aesthetics, messaging, any sort of media, and also social trends. Now, there's a little bit of an experimental quality here because people might rapidly change how they present themselves. That's common with Venus in Leo. I wouldn't do anything drastic that's permanent, but you make your own decisions, right? That's what this is about. But they're also going to be changing what they align with, and what really captures the attention of the collective will be changing. Because Uranus is involved, trends can spread very quickly and very unexpectedly. So that's one of the positive sides of that. Now, on the 16th of June, Venus will be making a trine to Neptune. That's going to create an atmosphere that feels very idealized, very romanticized. It's probably also going to be very emotionally persuasive, right? But Neptune does what? It blurs reality for us, right? We always have to mention that. So while this aspect can very much inspire creativity and imagination, it can also increase the projection and fantasy that we're experiencing. So things might appear more meaningful. They might be very glamorous. There's also going to be a very emotionally compelling theme or layer to anything that we are actually experiencing underneath the surface. Now, by the time we get to the 17th, Venus will be moving into that opposition with Aquarius. Well, she will be making the opposition to Aquarius. So that'll be the exact, let me just check. Yes, it's at 5 degrees. So when she gets to 5 degrees, she'll be in exact opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. So now it's themes of power and control, influence. It's social manipulation. All of those things are going to be much louder and they're going to be harder to ignore. In mundane astrology, a Venus-Pluto contact like this is often going to expose deeper tensions underneath the public image, right? Underneath the relationships, financial systems, right? The things that we value collectively. So something that initially is going to appear maybe attractive or inspiring early in the week, by this time, by this opposition, it's probably going to reveal a more controlling or polarized dynamic that's actually living underneath that. As we get to June 19th, then we're going to be reaching another major long-term shift, and that is Chiron moving into Taurus. So this is significant because Taurus governs themes of stability, resources, survival. It's our value systems. It's also the physical world. Chiron's movement into here begins exposing the wounds that are connected to those very things: our security, our self-worth, economics. It's our land. It's our food systems. It's the collective ideas about stability itself. And because Chiron moves really slowly, it's not like a passing mood, right? Like we're in it. We're going to be in it. It's the very beginning of a longer sort of healing, but also a destabilizing process around what people rely on in order to feel safe and grounded. And then on the 21st, Cancer season begins. So on the 21st, the sun is going to move into Cancer and we're going to reach the solstice point. If you are celebrating the solstice, awesome. And I hope you have a wonderful festival or gathering. Now, this is going to shift the collective emotional tone, turn it inward. Cancer energy focuses on things like family, protection, emotional safety, and belonging. Well, after that performative and very externally focused Leo energy that we had earlier in this month, this is going to create an interesting contrast here, right? Because people may still want visibility and recognition, but emotionally they are becoming more protective and reactive and security conscious underneath all of that. Now, when we get to the 23rd, the sun is going to be forming a supportive trine to the North Node in Pisces. So this will give us a brief emotional alignment point. So I would look forward to that if I were you. Pay attention, write it down. There can be moments of compassion, of intuition flowing through, or maybe a collective emotional understanding that is emerging at this point. But that softer tone doesn't really fully stabilize this month. On the 25th, the sun is going to be making a square to Neptune. So once again, clarity is going to become very difficult, right? It's going to look like emotional confusion, idealization, projection, it's just uncertainty around the direction or possibly the leadership at this time. People are going to feel very emotionally overwhelmed with competing narratives, with expectations around those narratives, but also just emotional reactions during this period are going to likely be heightened again. Then on the 25th, Venus is going to be making a supportive trine to Saturn. And this is one of the more stabilizing moments in the second half of the month, right? Because Venus in Leo wants expression, but Saturn in Aries really wants discipline and structure. So this aspect really helps us bring temporary grounding to relationships, to our creative works, to leadership expression, also all of our financial matters. So it's one of the few moments of the month where there's some confidence and clarity that's sort of briefly going to cooperate with us, and I would look forward to that as well. Now, the final days of June are going to really feel like the threshold crossing, right? We're going to be moving into a completely different atmosphere. On the 28th, Mars in Taurus is going to be making a sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. So that happens just before the changing of the signs here. It's going to create some momentum around action, growth, and emotional investment. There's a sense here that something is sort of preparing us to move forward very rapidly. And then later that same day, Mars pops into Gemini there. So this kind of changes the pace of absolutely everything, right? Mars in Gemini is going to accelerate all of those Gemini themes: communication, reactions, arguments, what we are experiencing in media cycles, transportation. It's also going to be very mentally active. So collectively, the atmosphere is faster, it's louder, and it's far more reactive as we head into July. But then at the same time, Mercury is really slowing down here, right? And this is where the astrology starts to become really important, because on the 29th, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Cancer again at 26 degrees. So while Mars is speeding things up externally, Mercury is saying, hey, we're going to start slowing things down internally, right? And this creates this strange psychological atmosphere where reactions are accelerated, but clarity decreases. People respond very quickly and emotionally, while the information itself becomes way less reliable and more subject to reinterpretation. And that's because Mercury retrograde is happening in Cancer. So the themes involved here are emotional perception, our memories, our home life, our family systems, our emotional security is going to become very deeply intertwined with communication patterns. So it's just not a logical retrograde, all right? It's a very emotional one. And then, of course, later that same day, we have the full moon in Capricorn at 8 degrees. So full moons always bring us culmination, exposure, and sometimes pressure release. So Capricorn governs things like institutions, systems, authority structures. It's our government, it's large corporations, it's all the long-term responsibilities that we have. This full moon is going to feel like this sort of pressure point around those things. Something is reaching visibility here. Something is going to mature. It's going to culminate, or it can no longer remain suppressed beneath the surface, right? And it is going to come out. So because the full moon arrives while Mercury is stationing retrograde, the collective is probably not fully understanding what's being revealed until much later, right? And that is also typical of a retrograde, but again, we're having this at the same time as a full moon here. So by the time we get to the 30th, Mars in Gemini will be making an aspect, a square, to the North Node in Pisces. And this activation point between action and collective direction is what we're experiencing. That atmosphere is going to become restless, it'll be overstimulated, and it's going to be difficult to try to stabilize. Now, people may feel very pulled toward multiple competing narratives or maybe reactions that are all happening simultaneously. And then finally on the 30th, Jupiter is going to make its ingress into Leo. And this is one of the biggest energetic shifts of the month, because Jupiter leaving Cancer and entering Leo changes the expansion principle entirely, right? That is what Jupiter does. It expands. But it's going to focus now on shifting away from emotional protection toward visibility, performance, leadership, your identity, and also self-expression. So it's the very beginning of this much louder collective atmosphere as we move forward. All right, so if we could say the first half of June was all about emotional instability and information distortion, then the second half is going to be about power, visibility, identity, and collective direction, right? That atmosphere becomes more performative. It's going to be very emotionally reactive. It's going to be more polarized than it was, but it's also going to be more revealing. And so remember that as you're moving through this, that's what you're trying to go in and figure out what is truly trying to surface at this time, right? Don't you just react to the emotions or the words, right? Take some time to process it, because underneath all of the noise and the rapid movement, June's really trying to expose deeper questions to all of us about what is it that people value, right? What do we really trust? Who holds influence over you and those around you? And what kind of future direction is actually trying to emerge underneath all of this collective uncertainty that we are experiencing? All right, that is the second half of June. We are going to quickly go through by rising sign just so that you will have a good idea of how you'll be experiencing this energy on your level. All right, let's kick off rising signs with Aries Rising. So Cancer is your 4th house and Leo is your 5th. Taurus will be in your 2nd and then Gemini in your 3rd. So the second half of June for you is shifting your attention toward emotional security and personal expression at the same time. The earlier part of the month is probably going to feel like you've already stirred up some emotional material around the home, around your family, around your inner foundations. But now Venus is going to be moving through Leo and it's going to begin to ask sort of different questions, right? Like, what part of yourself is actually wanting to be seen right now? There's this strong desire to reconnect with creativity, with pleasure, with romance, maybe your confidence. But that Venus opposition to Pluto around the 17th is likely to expose the tension between that authentic self-expression and external expectations that are coming from maybe your friends or your social circles or just collective pressure in general. Now, Chiron will be entering Taurus at the and it's going to begin this very much long healing process around self-worth and stability. And you might slowly start realizing that certain survival patterns or maybe financial anxieties that you've had are really connected to deeper questions about value and security. So then by the time you get to the end of the month, Mars will be moving into Gemini and Mercury is going to station retrograde in Cancer here. So this is going to create a push-pull between external activity for you and this internal emotional processing that's going on. And then things are going to speed up around, in general, communication and daily life with that Mars in Gemini. But emotionally, you might still be trying to revisit some unresolved issues connected to the home or the past. Good luck to you, Aries. For Taurus Rising, Cancer is your 3rd, Leo is your 4th, and Taurus is your 1st, and Gemini in your 2nd. So the second half of June here is going to be much more personal for you. Chiron will be entering your sign, and that begins a long-term process of healing around your identity, your self-worth, your relationships that you have, and also your own body stability or personal direction. So Chiron does not offer us immediate healing, right? But it does offer us awareness first about what we should be trying to heal or what is going to be attempted to be healed during this time. So you might begin to recognize ways that you have adapted yourself for survival that don't any longer feel like they are aligned with who you are becoming, right? Now, all of that's happening at the same time that Venus is going to be moving through Leo and brings this emotional focus into home, family, and your private life. But because Venus opposes Pluto mid-month there's some deeper tensions around control, responsibility, or public expectations that are likely to surface. So there are going to be some moments where career pressure is going to conflict with the emotional needs or the personal peace that you're attempting to seek. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde in Cancer near the end of the month. So it's communication patterns and agreements. Even your own thinking process is going to begin slowing down. It's going to start to turn inward here. So this is a period of reassessing not just what you think, but also how you think. Good luck to you, Taurus. For Gemini Rising, you've got Cancer as your second, Leo your third, Taurus is your 12th, and Gemini is your first. So the second half of June for you is going to put pressure on your identity, your voice, and your values. The month is going to begin as this sort of personal reset for you, but now the focus is going to shift toward what supports this new version of yourself, either materially or emotionally. Venus in Leo increases communication, visibility, and your interaction with others. So you might feel more expressive or maybe socially active. You might just be more motivated to speak about your own perspectives outwardly, right? But Venus is going to be opposing Pluto, and that is likely to expose power struggles in communication, social dynamics, or maybe even belief systems, right? Not everyone is going to interpret your message the same way. Now, Chiron moving into Taurus is going to begin a much quieter healing cycle that's going to be connected to your subconscious patterns, to exhaustion, to unresolved emotional material that's been operating beneath the surface for a long time. At the end of the month, then, Mercury is going to station retrograde, and that begins in your money and values sector. Because Mercury rules your chart, this retrograde may feel especially personal, psychologically. It might be affecting your confidence. It could be impacting your decision making, but also how secure you feel in your direction. It's very likely to trigger a reassessment around finances, self-worth, pricing, if you are in business for yourself, maybe your resources or just your emotional security, right? What you value is changing, and so the way that you define stability is as well. Good luck to you, Gemini. For Cancer Rising, Cancer, the second half of June for you is going to feel highly personal and also emotionally revealing. Now, the sun moving into your sign is going to increase visibility, but also emotional sensitivity. People are likely to notice you more during this period, but you're also becoming more aware of yourself. Venus moving through Leo brings attention toward money, resources, and self-worth, right? There may be a stronger desire to feel recognized, valued, or probably just be more materially secure. But then Venus is going to be making that opposition to Pluto, and that can expose where external validation and your internal worth are not fully aligned, right? Chiron entering Taurus is going to begin a very long-term healing process for all of us, but for you, it's going to be around friendships, community, your sense of belonging within larger groups or future goals. You might begin reevaluating which connections are genuinely supportive of your growth, right? And which ones aren't. Then Mercury is going to station retrograde at the end of the month in your sign. So it's going to be very personal for you. It's also going to be very important, right? For you, this is about identity. It's about communication. It's about emotional processing. And it's also self-perception. So all of that begins to sort of turn inward. And you might find yourself rethinking your major personal decisions. You might be revisiting the past. You might also be just emotionally reviewing who you have become over the past year, right? Now, I think that's a good thing. Good luck to you, Cancer. For Leo Rising, the second half of June is going to start to pull you out of the background and back into visibility, right? Venus will be moving through your sign, so that's increasing your magnetism, the attention that you are receiving, and also the desire for some self-expression. So you might feel more emotionally connected to your appearance, to creativity, to your relationships, just your personal identity in general. Now, some Leos might realize that they've been adjusting themselves a little too heavily around either relationship expectations or seeking external approval in some way. But because Venus opposes Pluto this month, there may be some tension between your personal desires and the expectations or controlling dynamics that are showing up in your relationships. Now, some Leos might realize that they have been shrinking themselves in order to maintain some level of external balance. But Chiron is going to be entering Taurus here, and this is going to begin a very long-term healing process for you that will be connected to your career, to recognition, to authority, but also public identity, right? Questions are probably going to be surfacing around success and self-worth, and it might become more emotionally important for you over time to be analyzing these things. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde in your 12th house at the end of the month. So this is going to create this deeply reflective period for you psychologically. You're likely to have some old emotional material coming up, right? You're going to be revisiting, going through your memories, what makes you feel exhausted, right? Or maybe just some unresolved internal narratives that might begin to resurface in order for you to review those before you move into this next personal cycle and before that fully begins. Good luck to you, Leo. For Virgo Rising, this second half for you in June is going to feel very transitional. You are probably going to start to notice shifting dynamics within your friendships, within your personal collaborations, and possibly your long-term goals, right? And this happens early in the month. But much of what you're processing emotionally is really happening internally rather than publicly. Now, as Venus moves through your 12th house here, this can increase nostalgia, reflection, also emotional sensitivity behind the scenes, right? That's what the 12th house is. It's what's hidden. Then that Venus-Pluto opposition is probably going to expose hidden emotional dynamics, right? Burnout for you, probably situations where you've been giving way too much energy away without even realizing it. Then we're going to have Chiron moving into Taurus, and that is going to begin for all of us a very long-term healing process. But for you, it's going to be around belief systems, education, spirituality. It could also be just your understanding of what gives your life meaning. You might begin to question, though, perspectives or philosophies that you once just accepted automatically, right? This period is going to be bringing up things for review and revisiting. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde in your 11th house, and this is going to be bringing a reassessment around your friendships, collaborations, your long-term goals, and the future that you're really trying to build. Now, since Mercury rules your chart, this process can feel especially mentally consuming, or maybe it's linked to your identity. It's as though you're reconsidering not just where you're headed, but it's also whether your current direction still feels emotionally aligned, right? Things are not necessarily falling apart, but what they are doing is they're slowing down. For Libra Rising, Libra, the second half of June is going to place some strong emphasis on your future direction. Now, the sun moving through Cancer is going to increase focus on career, on responsibility, and also your public identity. So you're probably going to feel more emotionally invested in your long-term path and probably more aware of the external expectations that are attached to that. Venus in Leo activates your friendships, your networks, and your social visibility. So there can be some opportunities for collaboration or possibly reconnection with your communities, things that align with your future goals, though. You may start to reconsider who you truly align with in terms of the future that you're trying to build. And then we're going to have the Venus-Pluto opposition, and this is likely to reveal for you power dynamics within the social circles that you are a part of. It could be some tension between your personal creativity and just, what everyone else expects. Now, Chiron is going to be moving into Taurus. Again, it's a deeper healing process long-term for all of us, but for you, it's going to be around the themes of trust and vulnerability, your shared resources, intimacy, and any sort of emotional dependency that you have. So this is about confronting where security and control have really become emotionally entangled for you. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde in your career sector at the end of the month. So professional plans, leadership roles, long-term direction, those things are going to require revision, reflection, and reevaluation, right? Before any sort of clarity starts to fully return here. Good luck to you. For Scorpio Rising, the second half of June pushes you toward visibility and larger perspective shifts simultaneously. Now, the sun is going to be moving into Cancer, so that is expanding the focus toward long-term direction, belief systems, travel, education, your understanding of the future. But then Venus moving through Leo is going to be activating the sector of career and public image very strongly. So you are likely to feel more visible professionally, or maybe just aware of how others perceive your authority and leadership. And then Venus is going to be making that opposition to Pluto. So this can expose tensions between public responsibilities and relationship dynamics. Power struggles or control issues may likely become very difficult to ignore for you. And then Chiron is going to be moving into Taurus. And for all of us, it starts a long-term healing process. For you, it's about partnerships. Over time, this transit is going to be asking you to confront relationship patterns that are connected to trust, to reciprocity, to vulnerability, and also your emotional security. And then Mercury is going to station retrograde in your 9th house. So this is about beliefs, it's about plans, it's about educational goals. It could be travel matters, right? Maybe just the future direction in general needs revision or some sort of emotional reconsideration before you move forward with some clarity. Good luck to you. For Sagittarius Rising, this second half of June is going to feel psychologically deep, but also mentally expansive. Now, the sun moves through Cancer, so it continues activating the emotional depths, the shared resources, vulnerabilities, but also any themes of transformation. At the same time, we've got Venus moving through Leo, so this is really creating this desire for growth, movement, and learning, maybe travel. It's just a broader perspective in general here. And you might feel very pulled toward experiences that will help you reconnect with meaning and inspiration. Then we are going to have that Venus-Pluto opposition, so that might expose some deeper fears, maybe some mental pressure, or maybe just communication patterns that complicate that freedom that you might be looking for. Conflicts in perspective, in belief systems, or just communication in general, they're going to be likely harder to avoid during this time. But we do have Chiron entering Taurus, right? It begins this long-term healing process for all of us. Chiron moves very slowly, but for you, that's going to be around work, health, routine, and the relationships that you have with things like productivity and stability. Now, Mercury is going to station retrograde in your 8th house. So this is probably going to trigger the review around emotional entanglements, any debts or taxes, shared finances, or just some unresolved psychological material that still needs to be processed. Good luck to you, Sagittarius. For Capricorn Rising, the second half of June is going to place strong emotional emphasis on relationships and trust. The sun moving through Cancer increases awareness of your partnerships, of commitments, contracts, and just emotional reciprocity. Now, Venus in Leo is going to deepen emotional intensity for you. It's going to bring focus toward vulnerability, intimacy, and shared resources. But Venus is also going to be opposing Pluto here, right? So it's probably going to be exposing control dynamics, attachments to fears, or probably just some emotional imbalance in those close personal relationships, or maybe those close financial situations that you're involved in. Chiron is moving into Taurus, and that begins a long-term healing process there for all of our Taurian themes. For you, that is going to be around creativity, romance, confidence, also your authentic self-expression. You are probably going to be rediscovering parts of yourself that have become disconnected through either responsibility or just emotional self-protection. And then we're going to have Mercury stationing retrograde in your relationship sector at the end of the month. So for you, it's conversations, expectations, and unresolved relational dynamics that are going to need to be revisited before you're able to move fully forward with some sort of clarity. Good luck to you, Capricorn. For Aquarius Rising. For you, Aquarius, the second half of June is strongly activating that balance between independence and connection. So the sun moving through Cancer is emphasizing themes of work, health, routines, and emotional stability in your everyday life. So Venus in Leo is then activating relationships directly. Partnerships are probably going to feel more emotionally expressive. They're going to be more visible. Probably also, just in general, more important during this time. Then we're going to have that Venus-Pluto opposition, and that's likely to expose some deeper control issues or maybe some emotional tension that is happening between your personal independence and your relationship expectations. Chiron is going to move into Taurus, and for everyone starts a long-term healing process around those themes. For you, it's connected to home, family, emotional roots. It's also your self of internal security. And then, of course, we got Mercury stationing retrograde in your work and health sector. So for you, daily routines, obligations, schedules, or just emotional burnout, those patterns are going to need to have some reassessment before you're able to figure out how you can move forward more efficiently. Good luck to you, Aquarius. For Pisces Rising, this second half of June is going to be activating creativity, emotional expression, and also your personal fulfillment. Now, the sun moving through Cancer will increase emotional sensitivity around things like romance, any sort of passion projects, right? Creativity, and really any matters involving children. Now, Venus moving through Leo is then going to shift focus toward things like work, responsibility, and daily structure. So this is going to be exposing the cost of over-functioning emotionally and physically without having enough time for restoration. You might feel like you're being pulled between choices of obligation and enjoyment. And then Venus is going to start to make, or she is going to oppose Pluto. And for you, that's probably going to be exposing unhealthy routines, some sort of emotional burnout. It could just be some deeper tensions that are connected to productivity and control in general. But of course, we have Chiron moving into Taurus. And that starts a long-term healing process for all of us. For you specifically, that's going to be around communication. It's going to be about thinking patterns that you have. It's going to be about your self-expression, but also your relationship to your own voice. And then we have Mercury stationing retrograde in your creative and emotional sector at the very end of the month. So old emotional patterns, romantic situations, creative ideas, all of the unresolved feelings, those things are going to start to resurface, and they're going to be waiting for you to offer them some reflection and reprocessing before that next phase begins. Good luck to you, Pisces. All right, that is the end of part 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you are trying to find me, I am at venus'sgreenspot.com. Hope you have a wonderful month.